Hey, also, here's another video. I'm pretty excited to make this one because it's very quietly profound. This topic. It's about chasing scarcity in baseball cards and this whole mentality and ethos that I think is very common not only in the collecting community but also in terms of archives, artifacts, relics, generally things that people own or people proclaim to be important, right? This is a really cool topic, so hang in here with me on this. Is that the whole real idea? I think of the importance of the ethos of what is valuable or what is important, right? Is something that's culturally valuable and culturally important. So people will tie that to different things. It's like maybe you have the Maserati or the Bugatti or whatever it is, and I just think that it's a perspective, it's an outlook, right? People will place this perspective or outlook or idea on scarcity, and in doing so, it's this idea of I have the only one of this in the world. There's that common trope of the people who are hunting for the gold or for the treasure, right? And so what really needs to be removed from that mindset, right, is the sort of like idiocracy of like I'm the only one that has this only thing in the world and this makes me or it special, important, powerful, etc. And people will chase this forever, right? They'll go on this road of I have this thing so it makes me this and now I'm that, and the whole time they're just miserable, right? Because the whole idea is I'm making myself important by separating myself, or I have this one thing that separates me from everyone else. And I want to connect this back to, I think, mid-century baseball cards. It's something that's so important because I talked about this. The mid-century baseball card is the totality. It's the sum of everything that baseball cards build up to for 50 years, right? From 1900 to 1950, and then you have the 50s and the 60s where baseball cards really come into their own, right? You have Topps, which emerges as the monopoly of the baseball card, and it declares the design ethos, the power of the card, the stats, the cartoons. Everything is very summed up, and it reaches its peak right as the United States actually as well reaches its sort of cultural and economic peak post World War II. These two things cannot be separated because the baseball card is emblematic of America's rise into modernity, an establishment of itself as a world force or a national identity. Um, what's so powerful here, this Hank Aaron card is a great example of this, is that this is a card that could be had, can be had, still can be had. It's en masse, right? It's mass produced and it's mass available. Um, that's precisely what's so important and so powerful about this card is that you have something that is deeply iconic and representative of a post-integration baseball league, which again, post-integration is once more, it's the sum and embodiment of modernity in terms of baseball, but in terms of global modernity, which is acceptance, collaboration, integration, and a transfusion of different cultures, ideas, people, forces. Right? It's not segregated. Um, you're dealing with two separate battling ideals, right? In a philosophical, but also an economic sense. You have scarcity, which is a more conservative viewpoint of I am the only one that has this thing and it makes it more valuable than other things. And then maybe you have a quote unquote more progressive, which is the integrative, the communal, the commonality, the shared. And you see this tension manifest, I think, in baseball cards because you have that whole classical idea of supply and demand. And really, what you want is you want high demand and high supply. Really, right? Because what that means is that you have enough for everyone, but everyone also wants to participate, right? So a flawed economic system has low supply and high demand, but people think of that economic system as being powerful, right? It's like if I have the supply, then everyone else wants this. It's not good. It's not good for a society. It's not good for a culture. It's not good for a civilization, because it creates a really toxic, competitive environment because everyone either wants or needs the thing that there's not enough of, right? This is just very simple, basic, and straightforward logic, but people just fail to see it and fail to engage with it because they think that scarcity which again is low supply, high demand, they think that scarcity elevates them on a personal level, right? It makes me a certain way, that I have this, and now it makes me better, or it makes me important, right? And so a lot of like the basic Western cultural myths are based on this. It's the person who ascends to power and thus has accumulated all of these different things or status symbols, and this is what makes this person important or valuable above other people, right? And it's just a story, it's a narrative, because in reality, nature doesn't function like that. It's not like all of a sudden a human being is endowed with incredible powers that separates them from nature or anyone or anything. It's an interconnected network, right? It's an ecosystem. But this is all mental, right? These are stories that people tell themselves. It's an ego story. And so when you look at a card like this, the tops, I think this is the 61 Hank Aaron. This is the embodiment to me of what is so important about mid-century baseball cards. It's that it's not an artificial inflation, and I'm going to say that the Mickey Mantle card's artificial inflation. I'm going to say a lot of the stuff that's going on in the pre-war environment is artificial inflation. It's these cards that they are scarce, right? I mean, it's the supply and demand principle. The supply is low, the demand is high, so the prices are elevated. You're looking at something that ultimately ends up creating a toxic environment, and that's not what you want as a culture and a community. You want an environment where there is more than enough of what is important, and that what is important can be shared among people. And I think that's a lot of what baseball cards are about and what baseball is about. And I've gone into this in my other essays, is that it's a communal force, it's a collective force, it's a global myth-making force, which has real power and real importance in terms of how nations and communities determine and identify themselves. So when you're looking at something like this, as opposed to, let's say, I don't know, like a very rare Babe Ruth or Ty Cobb card, there might be this kind of internal pull that you have towards it, where you're like, oh, if I have this, it's almost like the Lord of the Rings principle, right? With the ring, it's like, if I have the one ring, then all of a sudden I have all this power. But really, in reality, what happens there is you lose everything that's really powerful and meaningful, because you're so bent on this pursuit of power. And that's really what low supply, high demand ecosystems are. They're highly dysfunctional, highly toxic, highly competitive, and they're all based around the pursuit of power. You have a high supply, high demand ecosystem. You have really like a thriving environment, right? Where people are collectively, communally participating successfully in the circulation of resources and energy in a society and in a community. So this is it's a great example. This is again why the 50s are such an important period in American history, because you look at that environment, and again, right, this comes with a lot of historical baggage. Don't get me wrong, right? But you look at American history in the 50s, there's a very high supply, high demand environment collectively. But you also see this, interestingly, reflected in the artifacts from the period. I mean, Topps makes thousands and thousands and thousands of these cards. They're mass produced by one industrial superpower, right? It's kind of been mega monopolized by Topps baseball cards at this point. It's been totally singularified, so to speak. And so you have this influx of post-integration baseball legends. You can get a Hank Aaron card from the height of his playing career for 50, 40, 50, 60 bucks. Same thing with Clemente or Mays, or you name it, right? So this is the issue that I have with collecting, is I'm not interested in this whole, it's almost like this ego match, right? The shouting match of like who has the best or rarest cards. And I see it everywhere all the time, just honestly, because it's not what's important. People miss what's important because they're so bent on chasing the status symbol or the coolness of having any one card or any one thing. You're so bent on having the rarest car or whatever it is that you just forget what's important about being on the road and driving with other people, right? It's a mindset issue, and it's really indicative of the collective cultural illnesses that Western society and Western civilization has. Right, this is something that allows us to reflect on the greater cultural, social, and economic circumstances of the society that we participate in. Because whether or not you want to call it a society, it's an ecosystem. It's a community that functions on mass participation and mass engagement and mass involvement. Um, this is the height of success. You have one of the greatest baseball players of all time, one of the most iconic sets of all time, and this is readily available still. Uh, this is over what 60 years later now, isn't it? Uh, I mean, right? This is a way of participating in the mythic history of the country at the height of American civilization, so to speak, in a way that is available to you and the person next to you, and it's something that you can share in, right? You can share in the joy of participating in that. Um, this is the also kind of a diagnostic of the economic and social troubles of America post the height of itself, right? Because you have people who are spiritually and culturally lost, right? Because the economy has accelerated in a decline of kind of deifying scarcity, right? It's the same principle as celebrity in a cultural sense. It's that this one person or this one thing has this kind of exaggerated, blown out sense of proportion and meaning. It's almost like the concept of a billionaire, right? It's like this person has so much more power and money and meaning than anyone else. And you create a society or a culture or a civilization that functions on that framework. It's the elevation of a mental illness to a place of priority, and so you're unconsciously infiltrating and poisoning the water or the well of the ecosystem itself by trying to perpetuate this illusion because it makes a couple of people feel good, right? This is kind of the dark thing about it, because a lot of like the very scarce cultural artifacts of baseball history, right? These are kind of more these are for museums. This is like an archivist thing. It's almost like the Indiana Jones principle, right? It's like all of those movies are about Indiana Jones going on these missions. It's not to get the artifact for himself, it's to restore the artifact to its social prominence in a museum public setting, right? But then you have this very kind of pernicious background noise of these people who are chasing these artifacts to create political power for themselves or for the Nazis or whatever sort of the Russians, whatever it is, whatever sort of like enemy that's been installed in those movies. But there's something that's deeply true behind it, because again you see this culturally and socially and economically. It's that these people have created these like methods of participating in the scarcity system. There's a certain point of like scarcity where this has nothing to do with money. It has to do with preserving history, right? And it's not preserving history for you or for you to own it. It's preserving history for the collective to remember it, right? That's the function of a museum. That's a function of a public institution. That's the function of archivists. That's the function of historians. These are people who are doing a public or social service by remembering, reconstructing the collective history of a region, of a nation, of a culture, of a civilization, of a species, right? So you have these people who it's like, I'm going to assume this history, I'm going to assume this object because it creates, or it looks like it creates the illusion of status for me, and people will clothe themselves or adorn themselves in gold, so to speak, because it's supposed to reflect on the state of yourself, and it's a form of I don't know, deeply spiritual or psychological toxicity, because this has nothing to do with the real status of yourself, the real work that you do with yourself, your honesty, your integrity, your authenticity, the real nature of who you are, right? What you've cultivated within yourself, an ability to see truth or to recognize yourself and have real self-awareness. Those are the things that are truly important, right? Because that's the stuff that it's not dependent on some sort of outside thing or force, but people mistake that out of a place of fear, right? Because to actually do that kind of work is it's difficult, right? It's hard to actually take a real look at yourself. So instead of really looking in the mirror, they try to create a proxy mirror, right? Which is some crazy high status symbol or object that attempts to elevate them artificially. And ultimately, all of those systems come crashing down, right? Because the Bugatti doesn't change who you are as a person. And ultimately, you confront that, whether that's now or whether that's on your deathbed, right? So this is actually a really deep topic. And it's interesting how clear it is to see in baseball cards. I mean, I love to have 61 Topps Hank Aaron because it's just iconic card of one of the all-time greats, and it's something that other people can have too, right? So I can have a conversation with someone and it's like, I have this, you have this, we're able to share it with each other. It's not based on me having something that you don't, and I'm pushing that in front of you, right? Because all that does is create resentment. It's a form of creating cultural and social resentment, and you have people who are at war and at odds with each other. It's not a space of collaboration. And ultimately, honestly, if there's something that's out there that nobody can really have, right, and you're maybe the only person that has it, it's probably meant to be in a public institution. It's probably not meant to be for you, right? And that form of hyper possessiveness, right, is so much of what's wrong with our culture, whether that's relationships, whether that's objects or material, whether that's a sense of status or power, right? It's the whole kind of concept of the more power there is, the less love there is, and vice versa, right? You've created this environment that's so highly toxic and so based on a status that you don't really have real connection, you don't have real relationship, and even when you do or you attempt to do it, you're still so possessed by this necessity of elevating yourself, right? Having that one thing that no one else has, and you're poisoned by your own mindset. And a lot of people live this way, right? So it's kind of like a way of reclaiming community, and I think that's a lot of what baseball can do, right? I've talked about this in some of the other essays as well as baseball cards. A lot of it is it's about shared language, and language is about sharing. There's it's a two-way street. You have to be able to communicate. I understand your language, you understand my language. The point of language is to share. It's to create a bridge. It's not to create an island, right? So thoughts here. I think this is a great episode. It's kind of like uh, encompasses a lot, and it says a lot in something like this. So have a good one. I'll see you on the next one.